time I try, it feels like a fight.
Hello, hello, Enzo. How's it going?
I'm good, Saf, and you? How's it
Uh,
going?
I'm doing all right. So, you are calling in from Brazil, is that right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I've been watching all the presentations. My God, it has been a really long day, but the bar is right here, really high.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to hearing your presentation. It is titled Systematic Review of Anxiety Indicators, Coping Mechanisms, and Stress Levels in Esports Athletes. So, if you can share your screen,
Yes, yes. Let's go
we will
just a
get that
second.
set up.
Okay, everybody can see.
I can see it. I'm going to hand off to you and take it away.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Saf. So, hi everyone. I think I'm already introduced, but my name is Enzo Vinicius Lesniowski. I'm from Brazil, but I'm not here today to talk about anything about relating to Brazil, actually. Why? Because I spent my 2 last years in Japan and I was developing my research to develop a protocol to how to research mental health aspects, focusing on anxiety in Japanese athletes. For this reason, I need to see what's made in worldwide. And this research specifically will be published in the end of this month. So everything here you can check twice in the end of this month again. So let's jump ahead. So, okay. So this is me. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have a bachelor from Brazil. Right now a master in sports and Olympic studies from Tsukuba University as a representative here. I've been a researcher for 2 years, and I've been not only in Japan but also in South Korea to talk with esports athletes there in the PC banks and all of this environment. And I'm also a assistant professor. So let's jump ahead. And first, I need to introduce to everyone here that Tsukuba University is a well-known university in Japan, but focusing in traditional sports. And why this is important? Because every time that I present something about esports, I had the same question. Um, first of all, the table of contents here, I will pass by everything that I have in the article that will be published, an introduction, development, lecture review, discussion, and conclusion. But jumping in the introduction, every time that I made a presentation about esports in Tsukuba or any part of Japan, they ask me the same question. But esports actually is a sport. And every time I need to explain them again and again how the concept of sports is something that is fluid, was something that was changing through the history of society. So if we take like from the back of the days from the Greek society, the sport was actually activity to develop a good body and prepare the warriors for the fight itself. Through the time, we have like a different concept of it, and in the medieval ages, we have a totally different purpose for sports. Sports were something that was really difficult to have and to achieve in your daily life. So for this reason, sports was only for the royalty and was something that is more relates to social status than anything else. Through the length of time, then we have this narrow down sport to the competition itself, right? So we have the traditional sports that we have today, soccer, volleyball. Sorry, my throat gets really dry sometimes. Athletics and so on. And we have nowadays the that every country have a different way to see esports. Some consider esports as a sport, some not. But something that changes in 2018, Campbell and another other research, they brought a different perspective. They brought a perspective that we have like a spectrum of sports. So in this spectrum of sports, we have the sports that are more physical, and then we have a lot of shades of gray that will mix the physicality and the cognitive side of it. So on the one side, we have the athletics that you can make a lot of points and can be the most physical sport or not. And the other side, we have the cognitive side sports. And here we had only the chess, but now chess has a partner, esports. Let's play this. For this reason, it's really important to understand the history of every sport to qualify, understand the fights of every individual and every subject in the area. For this reason, I will briefly pass by, because it's not the main point of my article here. This is just the introduction itself. I'll pass by the development of my article, that is the history of esports. So if we talk about esports, we need to see two things: games and technology. From 50s to 2020, the years of the pandemic, we have a lot of remarkable marks every decade. So of course, with the 50s, 60s, we have the creation of the first games, the tennis for two and the Pong. The 70 we have the boom of the arcades. The 80 we have the first competitions. 90 we have the first game that was called esports and the net track. The 2000s we have also some other games that will split the world in eastern and western. I'll know that every country is a little bit different in terms of how developed the esports world through time, but in terms of, let me see, in terms of divide the world in West and East, this happened actually in the 90s to the 2000 because of the creation of StarCraft and CS. Because of the boom of the 80s, the South Korea have a really huge economy in terms of developing chips for computers, and for this reason they voted their whole economy to develop computers. For this reason, then the computers start to be more accessible for public. But the reason was for StarCraft in also in Western world, here for US, Europe, here South America as well. We have more tendency to FPSs like CS. But what defines esports and what makes a lot of, how can I say, a lot of stress for the whole players itself are actually something that are related to the 2010. And these are the creation of streamings, the Twitch TV, and also in 2010 we have the League of Legends as well, and through the decade we have Fortnite, but are also strong titles. But the main thing here are the creation of Twitch. Why? Because Twitch is a way, even nowadays, to connect the public, the audience, to the player. But here we have a problem, a really good side, because then we have ways to stream competitions that are new, was never been done before. But also we have a problem because we have a really close connection with the players, with the audience. It can be good if well used. Why? Because every move, every little mistake that every player made is saw by the audience and can be judged or not by the toxicity of the community or not. This depends on the community or which kind of game you're playing. The thing is, to the 2010 decade to 2020, we have this gap of 10 years that is raising the awareness of mental health of esports player. And the massive boom was, how can I say, the pandemic. In the pandemic, we have like a lot of examples. We have the Reckless that went to T1 that was saying how mental health was not a problem, but what was something that they needed more support to deal with, to cope with. In my research, then I say that esports, because of how structured the scenario is nowadays, has a vicious anxiety cycle. Because um, the tools of the players, anxiety of the players, is totally linked to their performance. Their performance is linked to their profit. And because esports is a really fast scenario, like competitions happens all the time in high performance, in professional levels, we are talking here, this profit keeps growing a culture that is demanding more results for the players, increasing anxiety because of performance, and keeps going like this. A vicious cycle is something that I defend on my article. And this anxiety cycle is something that is intrinsic to the field. So a systematic review to research if this same vicious cycle is happening also within Japanese esports athletes is needed to see how in the world also with the researchers that are presenting here are researching about anxiety. But the thing is, when we talk about anxiety, we talk about a lot of topics as well, because anxiety is never only one pack. It's a pack full with other, how can I say, other fundamental concepts with. So most of the times, anxiety is linked with coping, stress. Nowadays, because we have like a lot of physiological researches, also this anxiety and stress are linked with cortisol or heart beating levels or hormones and this kind of words, this kind of concepts. For this reason, my methodology here, I took 3 databases from 2019 to 2024, last year, and I researched with those 5 words that is up in the bottom of the screen to see what were the articles that I could find about it. I found almost 32 articles, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry. But from those 32 articles, because of my exclusion criteria, yes, I remain with 23 articles. And these 33 articles I divided by year here. And in those 33 articles, I will focus how they are researching about anxiety, but also stress and coping mechanisms, because it's a pack and never like only one of them. What lead us to the next step, that are the discussion part. And the discussion part, I focusing on the main topics that these articles talk about. Here I put only my interpretation of it. My references for everything will be in the end, so it's really I will explain where I took this data from, but here to simplify for the public, for the audience, is only my view. So I will divide this discussion in three main aspects: the role of experience, the well-being and performance, what relation, and sorry, this word is very difficult for me. Psychophysiological aspects. So first of all, let's jump ahead in role of experience. In the role of experience, we have actually 2 theoretical points of view. Most of the researchers that are inside of the 23 articles in my group, they make a control group, and they compare these results with an amateur team in most of the cases. They saw that in this control group, there's no increase of arousal of cortisol levels, indicating that supposedly there's no correlation between stress and cortisol increasing levels, but in the control group. But in the players group, these cortisol levels pre-practice had an increased level, indicating that maybe there's a correlation between stress and cortisol levels. The thing is, there's 2 theories possible for this reason here. Why in the control group there's no increasing of cortisol with the players there is this increase of cortisol? There's some theories about it, but basically, if the person doesn't care, I'm not saying doesn't care, but they don't have experience with games, it's the first time that plays a leisure activity, they don't care about how they are going to perform with their friends, how they are going to be saw by the others. They saw it as a fun activity. And for this reason, there's no stress levels correlating with cortisol levels. So there's no cortisol arousal because of its pre-practice. This is really important. But in the gamers group, let's put like this, there is a arousal of cortisol, and can be because they care about how they're going to perform. And this can be anxiety, performance anxiety. This can be frustration of skills. This can have different reasons why exactly. The thing is, I said and I highlighted pre-activity, because post-activity, there's some of the research that made semi-structured interview with the players, and they saw that post activity, the cortisol levels go down actually. In most of the cases, there's a correlation between these cortisol levels with the results of the game. So if they feel relieved, if they liked what they made with their performance itself, can be one of the hypotheses that so the cortisol levels and go down. But this is really important to highlight when these hormones check is made before or after. Jumping ahead to well-being and performance, the articles that I read, they don't put these two terms, but I would like here to make this easier. Basically, there's two kinds of stressors because it's important to highlight that well-being is not only the absence of the disease, but how the player feels with the activity, if they feel supported, if they have a whole network system to help them with any kind of problem that you can possibly have. In the research that I read, the articles that I read, they don't put the stressors in these two categories, but I put this to make easier for the ones who are watching, the ones who are listening to me right now. The thing is, one of the stressor categories can be internal of the subject, of the player, or it can be environmental. What this means, Enzo, what you're saying in the end. I'm saying in the end that these two the stressors that are going to be around the player, for example, team dynamics, audience, organization demands, these are environmental stressors that influence on the well-being of the players. And also there is internal stressors, they also influence on their well-being and performance. And these internal are anxiety performance, lack of confidence, lack a misbelief about themselves, and those are also both also influence how they achieve the performance during the activity itself. Yes, taking my yes, perfect. And now jumping for the last part, and I think it's the most important to define a protocol, are the physico-psychological aspects. I'm sorry, this word is really tough for me. So I divided in my article to talk about four aspects of it. So we have three psychological, that is anxiety, stress, and coping, and have the physiological, cortisol and heart rate. Here in this next session, I'll be totally linked with my table of articles, and the table of articles will be, I'll send to you guys in my last slide. There's like a QR code to scan my table of articles, and you can see where I take this data from. But here right now, here right now, I cited as numbers of articles. So for example, in my table, I organize between 1 to 23. And here I cited those numbers directly, not the reference of the article directly. So there was 8 articles that was talking and researching about anxiety. And between those 8 articles, they were using always one instrument to measure anxiety, and sometimes not mandatory qualitative interviews. Between those 4 instruments to measure anxiety, we have the depression anxiety stress scale, the competitive states anxiety inventory, the general health questionnaire, and the state trait anxiety inventory state. Every one of these instruments, they have good sides and flaws. There's no perfect instrument here. So if I take, for example, the DAS 21, the depression anxiety stress scale, is a really short instrument, so you can use it in terms of 5 minutes, and it is really good to use pre-game, so maybe 30 minutes before a game, and some of the cases they used exactly 30 minutes before the game. But also every time mixed those results with a qualitative interview to see exactly what the player was feeling through the time. These qualitative interviews they were made post-game, can be not exactly 30 minutes after, but sometime after, don't need to be at the moment. In Japan, there's a curiosity in Japan, to be honest. One of the things that I consider that will be a really good instrument to use in Japan specifically is the DAS21, because they use this DAS21 already with traditional sports athletes to measure them anxiety index. So would be a really good option because it's already translated and is already it's already used, but not in esports itself. So about stress, the thing is, there's not that there's no exist. That's not true. But the instruments that were used to talk about stress most of the times are only semi-structured interviews, and is a fact that all articles they put it the stress is unavoidable in esports. So it's like Thanos, inevitable. You're going to face it, this stress. There's the external stressors, the how the articles put it, and there is the internal stressors. Those qualifications, external, internal, are not on the articles. I put like here to make it easier to the information and for the presentation itself. The coping, there is only two tools that measure coping: the brief coping and the CD risk, the Connor Davidson resilience scale. And actually, coping will determine how can I say this? How well the player will deal and cope with the stress in the sports environments. And one fun fact, and not fun fact, but one curiosity here is that during the same structure interviews, experienced players, they analyze to have a better, how can I say, better tendency to deal with stress. So they are more experienced, so they lived the same opportunity, the same occasion, the same activity before, and for this reason, he or she is more prepared to live this again. But it's a fun fact here. In this case here, if I would use a tool to research about coping in Japan, I will use the brief cope, because also is translated in Japanese and also used in Japanese population, but not for sports. They were used for, if I'm not mistaken, for office jobs, office work related. And for last but not least, the physiological aspects, most of the times are only cortisol and heart rates. The studies that use those measurements are 4 of them. We have salivary cortisol in 2 of the studies, and only 1 study measure heart rate on the database that I used. And every study here that I used, they emphasized how is important to nowadays linked and see the correlation between the physiological aspect and the psychological aspect together, because there's not so many students that do studies that relate both of them. In the end, I talk about my findings. It's really difficult to find an article that talks about only one aspect of the whole cube here. They'll be always relating anxiety to coping, and with those two, seeing if how the cortisol is related to those two, how stress and coping are linked together. One other finding is the stress is inherent and intrinsic element of esports. So if you're a player, probably you're going to feel, not probably, for sure you're going to feel it, because of the whole pressure, the whole link between you player and the audience. And coping abilities are fundamental in esports, because they say how much pressure, let's put it like this, how much pressure you can deal with. And for this reason, experienced players have a better adaptability to deal with stressful situations. There is a lack of studies using psychological measurements, and for last but not least, there is a lack of tools specifically for esports. So most of the tools, actually all the tools that I cite here, are tools that were used in sports area or even our sports in human resources area, and then there's adaptation for esports. The only the only tool. Okay. Okay. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching until now. My conclusion here is it should be a more research is linking psychological and physiological aspects of esports. This is my literature review with all the 23 articles. Thank you so much. And last but not least, thank you so much to being here. This is the QR code for my references. I don't know how is the chat. Sorry if I took so much time, guys. Thanks so much for listening to me.
No problem. Thank you, Enzo. Would you like to hear my Portuguese or my Japanese at this time?
Which one you want, Seth?
That's all right.
I would say my Japanese is quite bad. I stayed there 2 years, but like I can have like a small talks, not that much.
Okay. All right. Well, more than mine. So do you want me to read you the questions or do you want me to post them into the Zoom chat?
No, you can read, please. You can read, please.
All right. First question. Based on your systematic review and your point of view, what themes or topics should future research focus on?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Nowadays, there's a lack of studies in professional teams. So if I could ignore all the bureaucracy or the relationship between teams and athletes, I would say that we should research more about professional athletes and see if those facts that I cited here actually also happen in professional athletes. Because everything that I said here, not everything, but let me think. If an article research with professional athletes, I'm thinking about it, all of them. I think there's not a own like databases. Maybe one of the articles they research in professional teams, but everything that we say here apply to amateurs and collegiate levels. So I think we should really apply this methodology to professional athletes, and of course, see if the same maintain and the same stays. Thanks so much, Seth.
Yeah. And so when you're saying, just to clarify, professional athletes, are you talking about professional
Yes.
esports players?
Esports,
Okay.
esports players.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Like take I don't know, take the huge organizations, take Cloud9, Fnatic, I don't know,
Mhm.
T1. Actually, T1 has a great lab of research in South Korea, but most of the cases they don't see the mental health aspect of the players. They are seeing how to improve the turn skill of the player. So there's this lack of research in terms of paying attention to other side of the well-being of the athlete.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't see a ton of research published, at least in English, coming out of South Korea. I think it's starting to pick up, but I think
Yes.
my perception is that they are doing research and then but not sharing results publicly. Like it's more focused on improvement of a closed system there. But if you want to shed light on
No,
that.
you're totally right. At least T1, I visited the building of T1 and I entered to see how the research is taking all the methodologies. In most of the cases, the university have some kind of deal to not share
Mhm.
the findings with public and to maintain with the whole team. And I know the public university of South Korea from Seoul, I don't remember the name specifically because I cannot even say the name, but they have a deal, a contract with T1, but also I know that it's another university with Genji and so on. So you're totally right to point out that.
All right, another question from Dr. Brooks Youngmark. Do you find that programming can be easily implemented across multiple programs to address these specific stressors?
Mhm. Can you repeat the question, Seth, please?
Yep. Do you find that programming So that program that you
Mhm.
discussed, the intervention, can it be easily implemented across multiple programs to address
Mhm.
these
Yes.
specific stressors?
Thanks so much. And actually, I ask you to read again to think and answer because it's a really good question. The protocol that I developed was intuitive and specifically voted to Japanese reality. Right now, I'm developing some semi-structured interviews with a person that actually can speak Japanese, not me in case, uh, unfortunately. Um, but I saw those those tests and I study all of them to see which one of them will adapt to a Japanese reality. And why I picked the DAS 21 and the brief cope. The brief cope because they divided the whole questions of the segments of the test, and some of the segments, some of the division, they consider a lot of the culture influence and also avoidance coping. Avoidance coping is everything that you made to not do what you need to do. Let's put like this, easily to make this go ahead. So the Japanese people, they have a lot of avoidance coping to alcohol, and they have a lot of social burden. And those two topics are really good to see if this person in fact is avoiding the situation or trying to confront of it. Because of this reason I pick the brief cope. So if I think they can be used with every population of esports, no, I don't think so because then you need to see if the test itself apply to that population, and you just need to change also the questions. There's a way to structure your question to a Japanese person because, for example, if you are too direct, maybe they will feel a little bit shy or not tell you what you want to know. And even if you try to do your best in terms of speaking, so there's our problems that are culture differences that I don't think can be wordly applied.
So you're saying out of major issues in Japan.
I had,
I
I
tend
had,
to be I tend to
I
be pretty
had,
direct. All
I
right.
had, but please.
Last question. What recommendations do you have for practitioners based on your
Oh,
research findings? So what are your sort of practical applications of your
okay.
research?
That's really good actually because I applied some of them in my own life. Let's play this because I work with some esports athletes as well. Um, Basically something that they are really afraid in my experience, and also not exactly saying directly on the data. A lot of times they are afraid to what they say is something that is going to influence if they stay or not inside of the team, or for example, if what they say to you is really secure to be with you. And in the end, something that is really highlighted in a lot of the articles, and I also agree, they just need, and as everyone else, a good and a great support network system. And as a practitioner, being there listening their problems is a great part of the job. And a lot of times this is not made. Even in professional levels, we have a lot of complaints about it. So if for a practitioner of esports athletes, adapt your sites to understand their reality. And now, so because a lot of people that are listening me right now and hold this conversation, hold this presentation, are already inside of this environment. So probably you understand way more than a lot of people. If you're a practitioner inside of esports and you don't understand about their culture, their reality, try to yourself to play, try yourself to understand why this is so important to them. Yes, can be a job, but there's a reason why they are so linked with this culture. Gaming nowadays or esports nowadays, which one you want to put, is not only an activity, is a way that you live, is your relationships, is the way that you pay your bills, is your friendships, is everything. So that's my answer. Thanks so much, Seth.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, if you can stop sharing your screen,
Yes, yes.
no problem. We are going to transition to get ready for